Good day, students. Today we will be discussing about the currency and the coinage system of the Delhi Sultanate. And in this lecture, we shall be looking at how coins help us to understand the history of the Delhi Sultanate, what were the different types of coins that were available during the Delhi Sultanate, and how it evolved as a system of currency under the Delhi Sultans from around the early 13th century till around the early 16th century. And we shall also be looking at how coins help us understand the broader economic history of the Delhi Sultanate in a proper perspective. So, the currency system, as we know, during the Delhi Sultanate came in a major way. In the previous scenario, that is the pre-Delhi Sultanate period, there was what historians have called a monetary anemia, or an absence of coins, debased coins in operation, and in certain cases, the existence of a barter economy. So, the history of coins in India, especially in the early medieval period, has been a subject of controversy to a certain extent. There are certain historians who consider that coins were almost non-existent. R.S. Sharma, in his hypothesis of urban decay and monetary anemia in the early medieval period, shows that most of the dynasties of the early medieval period in the post-Gupta times did not have an independent currency system of their own. The localization and stagnation of trade and the disparity of landforms in different parts of India led to a broad economic stagnation, which did not augur well for the economy at all. Thus, we find that in the early medieval period, there were mostly coins of a very debased character or the non-existence of coins in most parts of India. However, we find that there was a shift in this scenario from the 10th and the 11th century onwards. We find that there were different types of coins which came into operation, especially under the dynasties of the Rajputs. The Paramars, the Chauhans, and other Rajput dynasties began to issue coins of their own from the 10th, 11th century onwards. The Arab trade, which had been going on from the 9th century onward at least, shows that there was a brisk commerce and trade in different products from India and into West Asia and China during the same period. Therefore, the history of coins during the medieval period is a very important step in understanding the monetary history as well as the broad economic history of India during the Delhi Sultanate. Now, how do coins help us to understand the times better? We must understand that the Delhi Sultanate, with its own rapid urbanization, different forms of new currencies which came in, and the types of taxes which began to be collected from the 13th century onward, led to a new economic rejuvenation from the 13th century onward. Therefore, coins help us to understand this economic revival in better perspective. As we all know, that coins help us to understand and fix the dates and reigns of different sultans. The type of coins, the metallic content of coins help us to understand the economic prosperity or non-prosperity of a particular period. We also know that the find spots or the places from where coins could be found or located help us to understand the jurisdiction of a particular king and his own territory. So, coins help us to understand the economic scenario of a time in a better perspective. The dates which have been given in coins also are an important indicator as to how the economy functioned in that particular period. The legends and the different artistic innovations that are seen in coins also enable us to understand the economic and the cultural borrowings which took place during that period. The cultural symbols of other civilizations as well as other traditions could be marked in the coins as well. However, there is also something which needs to be kept in mind. Coins from the Delhi Sultanate are not particularly innovative in their locational importance. What is meant by that is that the coins, whenever they were found and whenever they have been relocated, for example in museums all across the world or in India, we find that the coins have not been properly marked. The weight, the content, and their economic value has not been ascertained properly in many cases. In several cases, coins are existent only in the private collections of individuals. So therefore, the proper perspective through which an economic understanding of coins could be done is sometimes hampered in the scenario of the times. But still, we find that coins are important and these can be interpreted in a proper light in order to understand better the economic history of the period. Therefore, the quantitative and the qualitative data collection of coins is a significant part of economic history. Now, as we were saying, the economic scenario of the pre-Delhi Sultanate period was somewhat debased. In fact, the coins of that time, the drummas, the karshapanas, and other such coins which were in operation were sometimes these could not be standardized, and therefore the non-standardization led to a scenario of economic disparity between different forms of currency. In most cases, the rulers of the time did not issue coins, or even if they issued coins, they have not been found by us. Therefore, the idea of a monetary anemia in the pre-Delhi Sultanate times is significant as a starting point. However, from the 10th and the 11th century, the economy began to revive and rejuvenate, and thus we find that a particular type of gold coin with the symbol of Lakshmi on the one side and the name of the ruler on the other side began to be issued by the Rajput dynasties from the Tomars to the Paramars and the Chauhans from the 11th century onward. There was another type of coin which was the silver coin, which were issued by the Hindu Shahi kings of Kabul and Waihind, and these coins were known as Dehliwals by the Turkish invaders of the 13th century. Both these two types of coins, the first one being the Lakshmi, seated Lakshmi coin, and the other, which is the bull and the horseman variety, these two coins were adopted by the Turkish invaders when they came to India in the 12th and the 13th century. Therefore, we find that the economy of the times was situated and these were adopted by the new rulers in a particular manner. Thus, we find that the early Turkish sultans, for example, we find Aybak, Iltutmish, and even some of the lesser known figures like Jalaluddin Mangbarni or Nasiruddin Kubacha, they adopted certain types of currencies which were a symbolic presence of the new rule, which combined the coins of the earlier variety together with the new rule. Thus, we find that the Delhi Sultanate in its beginning can be seen to have issued different varieties of coins which were a continuation with the past. We also find that historians have divided the history of the Delhi Sultanate's currency system into three parts. The first part being the initial Turkish rulers and their coinage, beginning from the 13th century and down till the early 14th century, till the time of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. The second period begins from the time of Muhammad bin Tughlaq and continues till around the mid 14th century. And the third phase is from the middle of the 14th century down till the early 16th century. So these three periods are essential to remember so that we understand the currency system in its proper perspective. The first phase, that is the initiation of Turkish rule in India, saw the emergence of new coins only with the coming in of the Delhi Sultanate in its proper format. From 1192 till around the 1210 period was seen to have a coexistence of different forms of previous coins with new symbols added to it by the new rulers. Muhammad bin Sam, as well as we find Qutbuddin Aibak, tried to issue these type of coins. Even in Bengal, we find that Qutbuddin Bakhtiar Khalji tried to bring about a new form of coin which is known as the Gaurav Vijay coins, where the name Gaurav Vijay was written in Nagari script on the one hand, and on the obverse we find the charging Turkish horseman being depicted. So from around the early 13th century onward, we find that different forms of coins and different forms of various languages were also used in the coins to demarcate a new beginning or a new period. However, the coming in of the Delhi Sultanate in its proper perspective, we find that the Delhi Sultans began to issue coins in far greater variety. We find that the issue of coins was also related with the idea of royal sovereignty, because every sultan tried to depict their own image of authority through their coinage as well. Thus, we find that Simon Digby, one of the historians, has tried to show that the coinage of the Delhi Sultanate was more efficiently controlled than any Middle Eastern or European currency of the period. Amir Khusru, in the late 13th and early 14th century, also tried to show that different sultans, especially Alauddin Khalji, tried to bring about an authoritative standardization and tried to check corruption in the mint and the minting of coins. So we find that in several cases, the royal authority was trying to stamp its own power on the issue and on the distribution of coins during this period. Now, if we try to understand where did the coins and the metallic content of the coins come from, we find that there were various sources from where metals used to arrive during the Delhi Sultanate, from which the coins used to be minted. We find that the local sources of gold and silver were usually located either in the eastern part of India, that is in Bengal, or we find that in certain cases these used to come from further east, that is the Arakan region, the Yunnan and the Tibet region of China. So we find that this was one of the sources of silver during the Delhi Sultanate. But there was other historians who have tried to show, for example, Najaf Haider has argued that the trade with Europe, the trade with different parts of Africa, and especially Egypt led to the inflow of currency, especially in silver and other currencies, into India during the medieval period. And this was one of the sources through which the reminting of coins took place in the Delhi Sultanate. According to Shihabuddin Wasaf, one of the contemporary historians, we find that gold mainly arrived in India from the gold mines of Ghana in West Africa. But we also understand that the seizure of different hoarded wealth from North India and parts of the Deccan and South India, the different dynasties who used to rule in these places were captured by the Delhi Sultans, and the hoarded wealth from these territories began to make its way to Delhi, and they were minted once again. So we find that the coin hoards, which have been located by historians from Gujarat, especially at Bharuch, have shown that coins used to flow into India from different parts of the globe as a result of trade exchange. And we find coin hoard at Bharuch shows that coins came from the Mameluke kingdom in Egypt as well as in Syria. It came from the Rasulid kingdom of Yemen. And also ducats or silver coins from Venice used to arrive by the exchange of trade into India from the Delhi Sultanate period onwards. The Persian Gulf, however, was a phase where Indians had a negative trade balance, especially because of the import of horses. This area did not show any positive balance of trade. Indians had to pay in turn for the purchase of horses from this area again. Therefore, we find that the sources of different types of coins and the metallic value of coins used to be different for different parts of the globe. And the coins which were minted were not just controlled by the governments of this time, but they were also maintained by the sarafs, who were the minting staff at the mints, and these were also somewhat privately controlled. Therefore, anyone who had coins with them could visit the mint and pay a certain tax and get their coins reminted at their own expense. Thus, we find that the minting system in the Delhi Sultanate period as well as in the later Mughal times was somewhat of a different variety than we have today. If we turn to the Delhi Sultanate and its types of coins, then we notice that there were usually 4 types of coins which were issued by the Delhi Sultans. Firstly, we have the gold coins, the silver coins, and we also find there were mixed silver and copper coins which were known as Bilan coins and pure copper coins. So these were the 4 varieties of coins which were available during the Delhi Sultanate. Iltutmish was the first sultan who tried to give a major standardization to the currency system of the time. We find that from the period of 1210 onwards till 1236, various types of coins, especially the copper jittal and the silver tanka, became important as a source of coinage. We find that the king riding the horse was the major way of depicting coins during the time of Iltutmish. Iltutmish was the first sovereign who began to issue coins in a major way in the Delhi Sultanate. We find that a firm ratio of 1:10 was established between the gold and the silver coins during the time of Iltutmish. Iltutmish was also important, his period was also important for understanding that coins had a religious value attached to it. We find that in 1228-29, when the Khalifa al-Mustansir enabled the grant of an investiture to Iltutmish, this was included within the coins and the religious authority of the Khalifa. The grant of the investiture from the Khalifa was used as a fillip to the authority of the ruler, and this was included within the coins as well. Thus, the issue of coins by Iltutmish began a new phase of economic activity during the Delhi Sultanate. We find even after the death of al-Mustansir, the later Khalifa's name, that is the Khalifa al-Mustasim, was included in the coins from 1242 onward. Even the successors of Iltutmish, like Razia, and even in the mid-13th century, Balban, tried to issue their own coins. By the mid-13th century, when Balban took over power, we find that the coins of the Delhi Sultanate began to be issued in a brisk manner. The coins which were in silver began to surpass the other types of coins, especially the jittal, in a far wider manner. Shirin Muzvi estimates that it may be that since there was no tradition of withdrawing or remitting of currency from previous reigns, therefore we find that Balban issued more silver coins, and rather than other types of Bilan coins or copper coins, because there was already in circulation a large number of Bilan coins in the economy. The Bilan and particularly the copper coins increased during the time of Jalaluddin Khalji when he came to rule in around 1290. The tankas which were issued by Kaikobad and his son Kaimurs were very scarce in number. Balban's followers, especially from 1287 till 1290, we find that this period didn't see much variety of coins during this particular period. But from 1290 onwards, especially during the rule of the Khalji sultans, especially Alauddin Khalji, the number of coins and the variety of coins increased even further. We find that I.H. Siddiqui, in his article, The Currency of the Delhi Sultanate, shows that despite the fact that there were different types of coins, it was the copper jittal which was the currency of the popular variety in the 13th and the 14th century. Therefore, the people used to purchase their products, they used to pay their taxes, and different kinds of economic transactions used to take place in copper jittals mainly. The Khalji and the Tughlaq period saw an increase in the number of coins that were in circulation. Especially we find that Barani as well as other historians of the time tell us that the standardization of the economy, the way in which the economy was being controlled by Alauddin Khalji, the different types of market regulations that he brought in, and the way in which the payment of salaries of various soldiers in the economy were being done in cash, all point to the fact that a cash nexus had developed by the late 13th and early 14th century. Therefore, the economy of the 13th and the 14th century saw a consolidation. The currency was keeping in pace with this economic consolidation, and therefore the number of mints increased, the way in which the variety of coins in circulation also increased. We find that Alauddin Khalji, because he was trying to bring in a new era of imperialism and trying to expand the territories across the Deccan into South India, there was a new urgency of minting coins that could be felt during this period. Historians of the contemporary period, for example Ferishta, in his Tarikh-i-Firishta, has pointed to the fact that the invasions of Malik Kafur into South India and the hoarded wealth which was looted towards North India led to a huge amount of new currency in circulation. It led to the bringing in of a huge amount of currency into circulation. This has been also tried to be documented by historians. For example, Simon Digby has stated that the given techniques of Firishta tell us that a large amount of hoarded wealth, the quantification is like this: 7.7 metric tons of gold and 12.8 metric tons of silver was carried out from South India into North India, and this was minted into currency. Therefore, the currency system during the time of Alauddin Khalji saw a major fillip during this period. The instances of Thakura Feru, which has been given by him in his book Dravya Pariksha, also tell us that the hoarded wealth which could be found in the reservoirs of the treasury saw different coins from the Rajput dynasties in it. The improved trade relations with West Asia and Central Asia also led to a brisk commerce and new forms of economic exchange, which led to new currencies coming into India from that area. The predominance of gold and other types of coins led to a change in the exchange value. We find that during the time of Alauddin, we find that the coins range from around 1:7. This was the ratio between gold and silver coins during this period. Alauddin's successor, Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah, tried to bring in a new message through his coins. he tried to pose himself as the Khalifa of the times. Alauddin, his predecessor, had tried to pose as the Sikandar-i-Sani, or the second Alexander, in his coins. Therefore, the relationship with the Khalifa changed in a major way in the early 14th century. We find that Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah also tried to bring about a change in the pattern of the coins. From circular to square coins is what we find during the time of Mubarak Shah Khalji. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, the founder of the Tughlaq dynasty, also tried to pose as he was the first king who stated that he was the Ghazi. Therefore, the idea of a religious warrior, the king as a religious warrior, this message was being stated in the coins of the time. We find that the Tughlaq dynasty brought about a new phase in the currency system of India during the Delhi Sultanate. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a king who tried to devise various types of new policies, and one of these policies was to bring about a change in the token currency system. The token currency experiment of Muhammad bin Tughlaq was something which was innovative for the times. He copied this principle from the Chinese example of Kublai Khan and also the Persian example of Kai Khatu Khan in the 13th century. We find that the experiment of token coins, whereby the 9 mints which were there across the empire, the Sultan tried to evolve a new coin which was made of copper and brass alloy. And this was introduced between 1329 and 1332. And it was reckoned as of same value with the silver tanka. Therefore, the idea of token coins, whereby the face value and the content value of a coin was different, was tried for the first time by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. However, this did not prove to be successful, mainly because of the fact that Barani states that this could be coined or this could be made by every goldsmith or local housekeeper. Therefore, the message was that the easy availability of different kinds of metals through which this new currency could be made was available to all. Thus, the token currency experiment was a failure because counterfeit and fake coins filled the market. Thus, we find that the coin experiment by Muhammad bin Tughlaq was unsuccessful. But still, we find that this currency experiment revealed the new situation in the mid-14th century or the middle of the 14th century, whereby the different forms of coins, silver, gold, and the non-availability of silver led to this new experimentation by the ruler. Muhammad bin Tughlaq's currency experiment was unsuccessful, but still we find that there were different values of coins which began to be instituted from this period onward, and we find that the next Sultan, Firuz Shah Tughlaq, brought about a new variety of several denominations, the Neem Jittal or the Adha Jittal, the Dang-i Jittal or 1/4 of a Jittal. These new varieties of subdivisions was brought about by Firuz Shah Tughlaq. Firuz Shah Tughlaq's time was a time of prosperity, as we are informed by Shamsi Siraj Afif and other historians. Therefore, the coinage of the Delhi Sultanate during this period was something which became widespread. People began to use coins in a major way, and we also find that the currency system began to penetrate not just the urban cities but also the other towns and kasbahs of the Delhi Sultanate. The attack by Timur in 1399-98 was something of a shock to the Delhi Sultanate. The currency system also suffered a major blow after the invasion of Timur. Thus, the 14th century or the late 14th century brought about a new dynamic into the currency situation of India. The early 15th century establishment of the Sayyid dynasty and the later Lodhi dynasty led to a situation where the coinage system could not remain pure. Therefore, we find that the four divisions that we had spoken about, the copper, the silver, the bullion coins and the gold coins, the standard valuations began to get dispersed. The non-relativeness of the coinage system in the early 15th century could not be stabilized throughout the 15th century. Therefore, we find that only gold and silver coins were being issued as ceremonial issues. When they used to become kings or during ceremonial occasions, we find that these used to be issued. Otherwise, the daily exchange, the networks of exchange, networks of trade did not depend so much on gold and silver. Thus, the 15th century brought about this change as a whole. In the early 16th century, the takeover of power by the Mughals and later on the coming of Sher Shah Suri in 1540 began a new period altogether when a pure metallic currency began to be instituted from the time of Sher Shah. Thus, we find that in the course of time, the long duration history of the Delhi Sultanate reveals that there was a logic of continuity between the monetary system, between the prosperity of India, and also between the economic history of the time. And this connection was important because the monetary system tried to bring about a change in the economy of the time. This is important to remember that over the course of the 3.5 centuries almost, the Delhi Sultans tried to issue coins of different varieties, and these were mainly suited to the times. It also helped them in the consolidation of their empires, and the idea of royal power and authority, which was based on a financial security. The currency system helped the rulers to institute a new form of financial importance and security to the times. As we find that the Indian economy of the medieval period was such that there was a positive balance of trade, and this resulted in the inflow of currency from different parts of the globe. Therefore, the economic situation of the Delhi Sultanate was reflected in the importance of the currency system of the time. So, thank you so much.